Welcome to the Mayor and fellow councillors. It's good to see a full bench here today. Welcome to the staff, the press and any visitors. Well, no apologies, of course, everybody's here. Extraordinary business. We have, not extraordinary business, but the Ashburton Resource Recovery Park will do a video when they come to their slot, and the seal roading program have got a overhead projection for you when we get to the roading part. Apart from that, is there any other extraordinary business? Councillor Brown.
One item, it's possibly extraordinary business, but it's item 7.1 on our agenda, which is the Ashburton Domain Development Plan, and it's taken in public excluded, and the reason being given is commercial sensitivity. I've read the draft plan, and I can't see anything that it should be in there, why it should be publicly excluded. So at the appropriate time, I'd like to have a discussion on it and even move that it comes into the open meeting.
Do you want to comment, Mr. Chief Executive?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, there's a legitimate debate to be had to Councillor Brown's point. The issue, however, is that we will be unable to discuss that in public meeting because indeed that then goes to the very heart of why we think it should be public excluded. So if there is if the view is that the formal reasons are not sufficient, then you can continue to have the debate in public, of course, but we can't have that discussion as to why it's public excluded in public meeting. So we're sort of a little bit catch-22.
I see we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, catch-22, not knowing the reasons why it should be in public excluded. It's hard for me to make a decision to keep it public excluded. Perhaps some other councillors might have a view.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, could I move that this item be withdrawn from the agenda? I think that it has come here when perhaps another workshop would help us to nut through exactly where we need to get to. My recollection is we had a workshop some 6 months ago, and I wonder if the correct path would have been to have actually had a secondary workshop before we get to the point of going to consultation.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in Mr. Brown's corner. I've been reading through the whole process and the documents. We discussed it 6 months ago. Basically, it came back like that. There's some small changes been made. I can't see any reason why it should be excluded in public. To go through it again with another workshop, I think is just a waste of time as such. So I will certainly back Councillor Brown.
Councillor Price.
Thank you. In terms of the workshop that we held, my recollection is that that was public excluded as well. But what I would like to draw your attention to is the process that the PCG went through before we got to the point where we put a consultation document out, and this is following that same precedent as far as I can see.
Councillor Lovett.
I'd actually support Mayor Favour because we've obviously had a youth forum, and there's stuff in there that needs to be put into this plan and that as well, and I would like to see another workshop done before we go further.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we withdraw the item. Councillor Lovett has seconded. Is the matter now withdrawn?
Moved by you, seconded by Councillor Lovett. Discussion on the motion that we withdraw 7.1 until we do a further workshop. Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'll support the motion, and then in the workshop, then the matters why it was being held, wanted to be held public excluded, will become evident and could help us in making a better decision.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favour of the motion that item 7.1 be withdrawn from today's meeting and subject to another workshop, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Carried. Do you want your vote recorded? Councillor Brown wants his vote recorded, and Councillor Raveley. The motion is therefore passed. Any further extraordinary business or any extraordinary business? Declarations of interest. Confirmation of minutes. Any changes to page 1? Or page 2? If not, somebody like to move those minutes? Confirm, Councillor Price.
I'll move.
Seconded, Councillor Urquhart. Any discussion? If not, all in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. 5.1, road closure application, Ashburton Trust Event Centre for the College Ball on the 28th of June. Councillor
I'll move the recommendation.
Councillor Malcolm seconded it.
Second it.
Any discussion? Madam Mayor.
Mr Chairman, could I belatedly declare a conflict of interest, please?
Fair enough. Talking to Mr McCann day before yesterday, we are working on a traffic plan to help ease congestion. Last year there was quite a bit of congestion around that block, so the council is working on a plan, perhaps through one of the commercial yards close by as an access, and when they leave the entrance, instead of all going one way, they could perhaps have controls on some intersections. So the council is mindful that it did cause a bottleneck last year. We passed it, did we? Yep. Passed that? Yep. Item 5.2, closure of stock race from Line Road. Welcome, Mr Askin. Any questions? You want to add anything, Mr Askin?
No, sorry, I haven't got anything to add. I think it's all self-explanatory.
Councillor Brown?
Just one question of Mr Eskin, probably, is in page 6 in the last, just before 5 point, on the top of 5.2.4, the water rangers confirmed, or recommends that the race remains in place to act as a swale for drainage purposes. So if it is left in place and it rains and the water goes into the old water race, which is no longer used, where will that water go?
I take it there is a so-called towards the end of that particular race.
Councillor Brown?
It's no longer a stock water race, and I assume that the so-called would have been consented for stock water, but it won't be for storm water. I think the race should be filled in.
Councillor Malcolm?
Yes, through you, Mr Chairman. To David, so following on what Neil's saying, do the banks of these races get removed, where there's cleanings and things like that are built up, so that they do actually have a purpose in removing excess floodwater?
Well, that's always been the intention, to make them into a swale to take the water off the road or off the farmland, depending if it's an in-farm race, it does flow and back into that swale.
Councillor Price?
Thank you. Just a question for Mr Askin. Has there been any process to check out whether this stock water race has any ecological value?
It has been checked out. It's been dry for quite a while, so there's definitely no ecological value in it.
Councillor Ellis?
Thank you. So if we close the race, we can't tell those landowners they have to keep it open, I'm assuming, as a swale. So has any modelling been done as to the effect of a stormwater event if that race is filled in, and what the implications may be to council of that?
No, there hasn't. It's just something that we suggest even in the in-farm races. Quite a lot of the farmers actually fill them in, but we suggest that they keep them as a swale to take that surface water away.
Councillor Revley?
By rights, the council has no hold to make the farmers do anything. The only right, when there's water in the race, it's council can control what happens. When as soon as there's no water there, it becomes a farmer's property again. Is that correct?
They said correct, yes.
Somebody like to move the motion? Councillor
Sorry, I just
Rawlinson?
have one more question.
Oh, sorry,
Which
yep.
sort of covers Russell's question, but given the comment about leaving the race in place, does the water ranger know that, with local knowledge, that this probably will cause some flooding if there's a big rain event? Is that why he's made that recommendation?
Quite often, well, what happens is that when we're doing a stockwater closure, it also goes to the roading department, and we have culverts that go across roads, and we always, well, the roading department always suggests that they remain open and is used as a bit of a swale. And where it's out on a road, they're always quite keen to keep it as a swale to take water off the road.
Councillor Brown?
I will second it, Madam Chair, Mr. Chair.
We haven't actually had a mover.
Sorry,
You
then
move it, yeah.
then I will move it, sorry.
Councillor Bell would second it.
I am happy to second it.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Item 5.3, transportation procurement. Welcome, Mr. Firth. We have actually discussed this at a strategy meeting. Are there any questions, Mr. Firth? Points out the reasons why we need it. So far, it has been very successful with our negotiations with NZTA. No questions? Somebody like to move? Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Seconder, Councillor Urquhart. Any discussion? If not, all in, Councillor Lovett.
I was just going to ask on the table, and it's at page 39, the year 8 on your 10-year program, some of the figures here go up. Is that the new bridge when it's sort of aligning to come in? It's in your document there. I was looking at some figures, they jump up quite dramatically down on the second to the bottom line. The total capital expenditure, is that the bridge sort of?
The design for the bridge has been put in over a 2-year period.
Right.
And
okay.
that's roughly about 5 million, I think it is.
Yeah, okay.
Do we get somebody? Hasn't moved it yet, have they? You have moved it, that's right, Ken. Any further discussion? If not, all in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Item number 6, somebody like to move thank you, Councillor Reveley. Seconder, Councillor Rawlinson.
I'll second it. Thanks.
All in favour, please say aye. Contrary, carried. Library. Welcome, quite a full report again. Anything to add, Jill? Any questions? Just getting a little stream of visitor information, obviously.
Yes, it's down on the last one. We had 6th of May.
If you turn up your...
So we had 60 for May, 60 visitor inquiries.
Councillor Bell, you've got a question?
Not a question, just a comment. I like the idea of having that library Facebook page, and it has been very useful to young moms wanting to take their kids to the different activities in the library. It's very popular at the moment for parents with young children. I recommend that one. Very good.
Councillor Lovett?
I was just going to ask about, you're now collecting information from visitors, what they're wanting to see and doing in the district, or, because we just did discuss that somewhere along the line. I was just looking at the freedom camping, and and the backpackers and stuff, have we got lists of all where freedom camping and that is in the district? Because I've never actually seen a pamphlet on it. And
Well, there isn't one, so far as I know.
okay,
But people will come in and they want to know about the dump sites or where they can freedom camp, things like that. As far as I know, there isn't any designated area. We try to get them to go to Tynwald, but
so we're actually, just thinking, are we lacking a system gathering up all this information for you guys to use? There's sort of no one putting all this together around the district, is there?
we have pamphlets that Bruce Moffat keeps up from experience, Mid-Canterbury.
I think rather than the library having to organise that, that's up to Experience in Canterbury to organise that sort of thing. All the library does is provide the situation for it to be, information to be distributed. Councillor Brown?
I just have a question on the 6.1.3, the public internet. You've refreshed the computers in there, Jill. Is that a cost on council, or is that the government who looks after that one?
We pay a lease for the service. It's about $7,000 a year. Yeah. So they've upped the number of access points we've got, which is very good. We only had 8 PCs, now we think we've got 15.
I think it's still it's very popular, isn't it?
Yes, it works well. We've put 4 of them in the children's library and they're just for the children, so I think that's an advantage.
Mr Chief Executive?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Chair, just to the previous question in relation to freedom camping and pamphlets. Indeed, what's happening is a lot of responsible campers are using the Campermate app, which has been promoted by GeoZone with funding from MB, and rather than seeking information from an information centre in relation where those camps are and how full they are, etc., that app has rather taken that space. So campers are getting access to information about where to camp via the Campermate app.
Thank you. Councillor Olson?
Thank you. That was exactly what my comment was about, and I was going to ask whether Jill receives the information that we're getting around Campermate and where all the sites are. So perhaps it would be helpful for Jill to receive that email as well.
She doesn't currently, but we can certainly include her on that list. I certainly know that EMC via Bruce Moffat find that information really, really helpful. It is, of course, historical. It won't help an immediate inquiry at the library. It is really data that we get post the end of the month, but campers are using it to get information.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Through you to Jill. Jill, item 6.1.4, the Senior Net Open Day. It was very pleasing to read about Phoebe Wang and the work that she did on Wednesday the 29th promoting the services that you have available. If other organisations are interested, is that a service that you offer to the wider community?
Through you, Mr Chairman, yes, we'd be very pleased to address groups on our services at any time, and Phoebe in particular is very good at explaining technology to different age groups. So.
No further discussion. I'll just remind councillors, when you do speak directly into your mic, otherwise it won't be picked up on our broadcast. Thank you, Jill. Museum, welcome, Tania. Tania's been doing good public relations. She spoke to a dinner club last night of ladies at Hines. So 40 ladies will be well informed about the Ashburton Museum and what you're up to.
Some
welcome.
Very nice ladies there.
Well, there's one nice lady there
one
anyway.
Especially nice lady.
No.
And actually two.
Any questions, or you got anything to add, Tania?
I think the main thing was, I don't know how many of you know about our museum adventurers. You're not exactly our target market, But this is a kids group that we started about a year ago. When you come into the museum, you can join and you get one of these lanyards, and you get to have stamps on the back. You can tell I've visited 3 times, and I've done a few activities, so I've got some badges. And it's been running for a year now. We have, it's a little hard to say the exact number, but we think in our market of around about 3 to 12-year-olds, we've got more than 10% of our district's children now signed up for this. Quite a few kids from outside the district too, and they can also do a reciprocal thing with Timaru, so they can collect their badges and stamps down in Timaru as well. And we have quite a lot of people will come up in holidays, especially to come and see the museum and go into the domain and so forth for the day. But the amazing thing is, what we hadn't planned for was actually how frequently people were visiting as they go up the levels. We have kids now that have visited 25 times in 1 year, and we had no plan for what happens when you get beyond gold. And we've suddenly got quite a lot of kids that have got into that. So that's quite telling of how that repeat visitation, how that program's really helped that repeat visitation.
I think platinum, is platinum above gold?
I know.
Or diamond, or?
We thought we might give them a little gift and tell them after that they go back to the beginning.
Any questions by councillors? Councillor Lovett?
I was just going to ask, at the end of that, is there any opportunity for those really keen kids to be able to come and help in the museum and sort of do courses through that to keep them coming?
So they're usually the young kids, and we've done those kind of programs through our education programs. But we also are quite keen, there's something called Hack the Museum, and we're quite keen to have a kids museum takeover day. We just have to make sure that we're all brave enough to not think we're going to lose our jobs.
No further questions. Thank you, Tania. 6.3, welcome Steve. EA Network Centre. Anything to add?
Through the chair, no, not at this stage, no.
Any questions? Councillor Price.
Thank you. I wonder if you could flesh out what a floating movie night might look like.
Through the chair, basically what it is we put a movie on and we then have a large number of tubes and a floating object where people can sit on them and sit around and float around while they're watching a movie. So that's how it works. And we have a number of extra lifeguards on duty to ensure that no one drowns. And and it's for not just for children, it's also for families and younger ones as well. So.
I had heard Jaws was quite popular on that sort of side.
Through the chair, that was the first movie that I actually ever showed in a floating movie, and we did that in Dunedin, and we turned all the lights out, and it was probably wasn't the smartest thing to do, but yeah, it got some pretty good reviews about it, but yeah, it went pretty well.
Any further questions? Thanks, Steve. Got off pretty lightly there. 6.4, open spaces. Welcome back, David. Anything to add to all those reports? There's 4 there.
No, nothing to report.
Questions? Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Through you to Dave. Just wondering, what are the plans for the Methven town toilets, or what kind of upgrade are you doing, and how far away from are we with the playground going into Camrose?
Your first question regarding the toilets are in the 2019-20 budget, so we're just getting prices, and what we intend doing is retiling, refurnishing the inside, and probably in the males' toilets fitting in 3 stalls rather than 1 and a urinal. So just refitting and tidying it up. the playground at Camrose, hoping to get some equipment in the next couple of weeks. I'm having trouble getting City Care, who are going to put in the mouse house and some other equipment. They've got the contract to put it in, and I'm just having problems getting that for them to put it in at this stage.
No further questions. We'll go on to 6.5, stock water. I see there's a steady number coming in for closure. We've just passed one earlier in the meeting.
Yes, yeah, we're probably getting, probably one or two a week that are coming in. Some of them are pretty small, just maybe a change in alteration and where it's going. Other ones are just an in-farm race that they're closing up.
Yes, if that's the case, you have the power within farms just to close it without having to go through the full council.
Yeah, the group manager of service delivery has that delegation. Yeah.
Councillor Brown.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just on stock water, over the page, talk about Craycroft on fish screens. Craycroft intake, you're possibly not going to put a fish screen on and use the RDR instead. Would you look at closing that intake, Craycroft, or not?
Sorry, through the chair. Yeah, so the intention would be, it's early days, we haven't started the conversations with the irrigation companies, but the intention would be to close the intake and the approximately 1.6 of main race between the current intake and this potential connection point. So there's a lot of benefits for council if we can make it work.
Councillor Everly.
Is there any way of finding out how many users of that stock race there are actually still using that race?
Yeah, we could certainly find that out, but it's fairly substantial. I mean, it's still a key race of the network. So at this point, we're just trying to look at an opportunity around the intake itself. What might fall out of 10 years from now, that's still to happen.
You will see in 6.53, oh, sorry, Councillor Ellis.
Didn't realise we'd moved on to fish screens. So just question, what's our time frame around this? Because we've been obliged to put these fish screens in, I believe, for a very long time. And to be fair, we do seem to be fudging our requirement to do so. So what sort of time frame are we working in here to make ourselves compliant and actually be where we should be at?
Yeah, so the current program that council's approved is we're doing design this year with a view to construction next year. The problem I had was when I sat down to start writing the briefing document for the design, there were a couple of these sites where just makes more sense to actually get out of the intake in its entirety. And that's the opportunity we're just focusing on at the moment. We've had compliance reporting from ECAN. They've actually given us a wee bit more slack in terms of their expectations around the completion of the fish screens. There could be up to another 12 months being made available to us to become compliant. So with that in mind, I think it's worth exploring these opportunities before we commit to the capital work.
You'll see on 6.53, we have pages 65 to 78, but that's been delayed until the 27th of June council meeting, when it will be discussing and adopting it. Thank you. Solid waste. Welcome, Craig. First of our videos, you could explain what you're going to show us and where and why.
Oh, as you're aware, we've been doing a bit of work down at the Resource Recovery Park. So using the drone and that we have, we did a flyover sort of a little bit before while we were initiating the works, and then towards the end when we were finished. So we're just going to show you what we've achieved this season and just talk a bit about it. I'll swap chairs with you.
welcome Shamal as well, our new operations and projects manager.
Just coming out, the big green roofed building there that you can see there, that's actually the new recycling canopy. And if you look down underneath, you can see the 3 lanes, and in there's 3 lanes, and it's all covered area for recycling and that. So a lot of the thrust of the work that we've been doing with new bunkers and covering the recycling areas is obviously make it a much more user-friendly experience for the public that come in. The other reason is, when you produce material for market, even us, we're concerned about the quality of that material, because if we send that material and it's got gravel or dirt or mud and that through it, then it's less likely to find an end market. So if it's kept out of the rain and we get it and it's clean and it's in good condition, it's much easier to be sold. So that's one of the tangible reasons for doing that. So as we're going forward through here, you can see there's an area there on the right hand side where there's a digger operator operating. So in there is where there's a new set of bunkers gone in there. As we come around here and looking over the back of the pit area, you can see there was I will come back around it. So this is, I'll just stop here. This is the old green waste area, and it's all on sort of dirt and rough ground. And this is kind of how a lot of the park used to be. And we've because with the paving now, we've tidied that up, and it means we're tracking less mud around. And the public, when they come to drop their material off, they're not having to be in the mud. So this is that area I was talking about before. This is where we had a bit of slumping down in the bottom pit area where the underlying landfill had compacted, and then the paved yard above started to break up, so we had to basically replace it and rebuild it. So that work is also completed, and that makes us compliant with our consent now without any surface water making its way down through the old landfill material. So this is looking back up, looking northwards, and this just shows how we've kind of historically done things with just cruddy old concrete blocks and creating temporary bunkers and sort of a really makeshift approach to managing our materials on site. And we're now sort of working towards a much more professional operation, which is pleasing. So yeah, that kind of shows. And this is again, this is another typical area here where we were storing our scrap metals and whiteware and stuff. And as you can see, it's all on bare ground, dirt, there's water and mud. So that this is the kind of thing that we wanted to rectify.
Craig, can you just explain when that photo was taken? Because this is a before photo taken
this is a
several
before
months
photo.
ago.
So this is we've since paved that yard. Yeah, so
and
this
we'll show you the after photos.
Yeah, so we're coming up to the results in a minute. Just sort of kind of showing you, how it was before we started. And so this is a finished view looking down on the pit area and that finished paved yard there on the right hand side. And you can see there's an area there where there's a block wall and some white plastic, and it's about centre screen now. So that's soft plastics. That's the stuff that's really hard to get rid of at the moment with the change in the China, China and other Asian countries, their change in policy of importing low-grade plastics. So we're currently been sort of just storing that up, and there are a number of projects vying to get going in and around the country, and some of them are here in Canterbury.
Craig, sorry, could you just go back a little bit?
Just try that. So,
woo, there.
Yeah.
Top right-hand corner, I took a load of green waste in that little wee cubby hole at the top right. I hope that is going to be modified because it's pretty pokey compared to the yard we used to have.
Oh no, absolutely, you did right, and it is a temporary measure at the time being. So basically, back in the left-hand corner, we're creating an area in there which has got much more room. So yeah, as we've done this work, we've had to shuffle things around and sort of direct people into temporary areas while we do this. It is a busy site. There's a lot going on. It's part of keeping the site open and keeping it going as we go. but we will end up with a much bigger area. And as we go forward, I should be able to point that out. So I'll just stop here again. So again, up in the top right-hand corner where the main entrance is, you can see the public can now come in through there, and we've created an entrance that comes in under the big green roof, and there you can see the 3 lane arrows there. So there's 3 lanes for dropping off material under that roof. So as we come round now, you can see the administration building where there's a couple of cars parked in front of it. The 3 big glass bunkers that we got there, we've got those emptied at the moment. We're just going to do a bit of maintenance on the pit floor. And if I stop at, it's just gone. Let's go back a bit. So I stop there, you can see on the left-hand side that area where it's all been paved behind the pole shed. That was where the white wearing that was. So this is just another view of that yard. It's when it was finished. Still a bit of tidying up. It's just as we finish kind of thing. So it's looking even tidier now. So there in the bottom left-hand corner is that's that yard where the white wearing that was. That big dark patch of new asphalt. So this is now showing you. This also shows that piece that we've covered. I'll just let it run. So that area there, actually I'll just stop there, we'll just go back. Actually I'm going to talk about, I was talking about the reuse shop. We've got 2 big shipping containers sitting at Ashburton College at the moment, and by the end of the month, so they're due to be back on site and around about the 28th of June, and they've got artwork done by the students on them, and they're going to go into this area here, which is now the old drop-off yard. And we're going to put a hooped roof between the 2 containers, and that's going to serve as our temporary reuse shop once we vacate that reuse building that is basically non-compliant now. We can't keep using it. So that's our temporary solution, is to create the reuse shop in this area here. And then as the drone flies over the top of that little pole shed, that's that new yard there. That's all tidy now. Really nice to have that. Just looking down on it, and the glass bunkers. And this is the pit area, and I'll stop this coming around because I just want to quickly mention, actually I'll stop it about there, about wind and the problem we have with wind. Oh, it's gone too far. Okay, so as you can see, that's the pit area, and we have this big truck that's coming in at the top corner there. That's a front load truck, and it's full of rubbish and it comes around into the yard, and it empties underneath that roofed portal area there, and that's where the pit and the compactor is, and the material gets compacted into those bins. But if we have a really windy day, we have wind howling down underneath that canopy, and it hits the rubbish on the pit floor, and then it just blows. It just blows away on us, and that's why we close the park when it's really, really windy. We do keep it open for the big commercial guys like Gary McCormick and those whose living rely on us being open. And we manage it as best we can. By doing that, by reducing the amount of traffic in, it means that even on a windy day, if they put the material on the pit, we can push it into the compactor as soon as it's put on the ground and reduce that problem, and still keep those guys, their businesses running. So the drone's just flying around now as it comes around. And it's you can sort of get a look now. You can kind of see how the wind would funnel underneath that canopy and that. So these are the new bunkers. We're just temporarily using them for glass until we can do a few repairs on the big bunkers, and then those bunkers will be used for e-waste and other materials. So there, you can see there where that truck has dumped its rubbish. So you can imagine if the wind's blowing through there, it just starts blowing away, especially if there's light bits of plastic and stuff like that. And that's one of the things we've got to eventually resolve. And yeah, that's it. And that's just looking back up. You can see the new bunkers there on the left-hand side. So yeah, that's it. So questions?
I've got one. Whereabouts on that plan is the green waste going to be eventually stationed?
Oh, okay. So in this picture here, if you follow the sight line across the green roof, and just to the right-hand side of where the compactor is, and in that back corner, and there you see some trucks parked in that back corner at the very, very far end, that's where we're going to have a green waste area. So we've levelled that area out, and we're compacted. We've got material in there. We've compacted it all down. We've created a bund around it. We're going to plant a hedge of feijoas and other bits and pieces. We're going to do some native plantings as well in other parts of the park, but and that'll act as a litter catch. So if we do have litter blowing in the park, it will get caught by the hedge and not go over the fence. And then that area in there is where we'll receive the green waste. And one of the reasons we're quite keen on bringing it down towards the pit area is because we've just about always got staff down there. And one of the things I'm concerned about with the old area up top, is that quite often the public will go in there and they'll go in there and there's no staff up there and they'll just unload by themselves. And if we have, say, someone, have a bit of a heart attack or a bit of a turn or something like that, we would rather that they were somewhere close by where our staff can see it and take action immediately.
Councillor Price.
Thank you. And just supplementary to that, what will become of the old green waste area then?
So the old green waste area, we'll continue to use it as an auxiliary area. We will just, the contractor can store their bins and other bits and pieces and things up in there. So I think if we go back around about here somewhere where we were looking at, so about there. Whoa, stop. Go back a bit, just a bit. Let's try again. Yeah, so you can see they are using that area. And up in behind those big blue bins, they'll be temporarily while we're working down the bottom. We've got cleaner, so just rubble and other bits.
And supplementary to that, the old, no longer compliant reuse shop, is that just going to be demolished?
Yeah, so we're working through the business case for that at the moment, and hope to have a report to you in August as to the full costings for that and the options and things around that. But I just want to make sure I do that job properly before I bring it to you.
Councillor Reveley.
Yeah, you've got a fair bit of hard surface there now, so have you got a pretty good plan to get rid of the stormwater that gets onto that section, and have you got consents to get rid of the stormwater?
Yeah, so the previous round of works that we did, and I don't know if we can see it further in here. I'll just hang on, so speed this along. So we, in the previous bit of work we did, I think it was a year before last, we installed an attenuation pond and things down in the bottom corner by the pit, and we may be able to see it as this swings around. What the attenuation pond does is that it takes all of the stormwater that comes off these hard surfaces, particularly in the pit area, and it holds it in the pond, and there's a pump, and that pump puts it into the sewer system at a controlled rate, and it'll only do that for about 10 minutes. So it takes all the dirty water first, and then if it's a really big rain, so it's just behind those blue bins, right there beside the fence. And then there's another pond further down on the right-hand side, further down in that corner, and that's an overflow pond. So if we have a really big rain event, basically it'll flush the first 10 minutes, so all the yucky stuff that comes off the pavement will be controlled into the sewer system, so it doesn't overload the sewer system. Doesn't affect any of their surrounding businesses because the sewer doesn't get overloaded or anything. Doesn't pop any manholes or do anything like that, and then that excess volume of water can then flow down into a storage pond down on the right-hand side, and inside that is a sleeved soak hole that goes right down and through the old landfill and down into the virgin gravels, and it's quite safe to go down in there. We've got a consent to do that, but it would take a phenomenal amount of water for it to get to that soak hole. The pond itself is big enough to take most rain events, and it's vegetated, so it sort of acts like a natural filter and cleans it as well. Yeah.
Councillor Rollinson.
Thank you. And my question's not regarding this report, which is great to see the whole site looking as good now, but when the cycle track had its cap broken and the resurface damaged, I just wondered, where are we at with that? Is that fully repaired now, or is it a work in progress?
Yes, no, we've had that repaired, so that damage has been repaired. And we are working with Environment Canterbury at the moment about, fixing that. So we're just currently discussing options around how to tow that slope will be armed against severe flooding. We had a massive event. I mean, it's unlikely that the water course will change its direction, but we want to be sure we've got that network protected with it. So we're just having discussions about what material to use in that tow. I would like to reuse concrete and other bits and pieces. So yeah, sorry about that. So I'd like to, reuse like some of the old concrete that's already down on the river flats down there, been down there for years, and it's an opportunity to tidy that up and use it to armour the tow of the landfill. So we're just talking with ECAN about how to go about that, and I need to have another meeting with the River Trails Committee and inform them and let them know where we're at and get their approval, and then we can start going forward.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, and I have to congratulate you on this, Craig. It looks like a fantastic facility, but my question is, are we now noticing that we have this very user-friendly site, that we're getting a reduction in how much we're having to send to Cape Valley, so that there's actually a trade-off with what we're doing?
Yeah, I think overall, in just the systems all over, the curbside wheelie bin system, we've obviously got an increase in the amount of rubbish that's coming in through that system, so it kind of tempers the figures a bit. But if you take the total volumes of recyclables we're now recovering, we're up over 30%. And in glass has gone huge. Rural glass were like 200% in about 3 years. So yeah, no, we've made some really good gains. The total volumes of refuse going to landfill is still around about 12,000 tonnes a year, but it is levelling off, and I think that's a sign that we're making some gains now.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Through you to Craig. Craig, I heard Councillor Wilson mention that he'd dropped off some green waste to a different location. My understanding with the previous green waste was they were in windrows and they were on a slow composting system. I'm just seeking your assurance about how that's been handled and if we've been environmentally sustainable in the way we've disposed of or the way we intend to dispose of the existing windrows.
Yeah, so those existing windrows that are up in the old area up there, they'll just continue to break down, and it's good material, and we can reuse some of that around the site. We can pass some of it on. It's actually the property of Envirowaste because they get to own the material that they process. Where it's going at the moment is it's being handled by McLaren Contracting, based down at the old Wastebusters site. He still calls himself Wastebusters. So we are sort of keeping a close eye on that. He's got quite a lot of material out the back of there at the moment, and so we're just keeping an eye on that operation and making sure that it's working as we agreed. Yes.
Councillor Lovett.
I'm just going to ask a question around shelter. You saying about the rubbish blowing. What have you got plans? What are you going to do there? You're planting, or you kind of looking at fencing, or?
I think that's. Apologies for interrupting. I think that's a long-term project. It'll have to be in a 10-year plan, and it may be one that we sort of do in stages over a period of time. But eventually, we need to make a decision how when we receive rubbish through the waiver stream that's intended for landfill, do we actually go through and sort that and try and reduce that? Which would come at a cost, or do we just cover that and put a roof, put a building over the top of that and continue on? The compactor is now like 20 years old, coming up 20 years old, so in sometime in the next 10 years that's going to have to be replaced as well. So yeah, it's a project that needs to be put together and then brought to council in a 10-year plan.
No further questions. Thank you, Craig. Nothing else on solid waste 6.61, 6.62. 6.73, water capital projects. Welcome back, Andy. Any questions? Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. I see the tender has requested an extension, so are we getting some good interest on this, so that it's likely we'll get some good competitive rates?
Yes, so several parties showed interest in this tender. So the reason for extending was to make it more competitive because they had lots of questions, and they also wanted to do a bit of investigation, come down. So a lot of companies have done that. The tender closes today at 4 p.m. So I'm also looking forward to seeing how many actual tenders go for it.
Just supplementary, are we lowest price conforming for that, or are we going to have other attributes we're going to look at when that tender's let?
So we will be using price quality as the way of evaluating the tender. So it will be, I think the weighting is 40-60. So I think 40% for price and 60% for quality, or the other way around, something like that, but it's 40 and 60%.
No further questions? 6.8, Borehead project. I see they've amended the regulations slightly. Have they to cost us a little bit more per borehead?
Yeah, so through the chair, the information I just wanted to pass on there was in relation to the need to put these sanitary seals in. The background to this actually stems at the original upgrade of the Ashburton water supply, where the first 2 bores that we drilled as part of the upgrade, there wasn't a lot of thought around sanitary seals at that time. It wasn't a common practice. And then the subsequent ones that we drilled, the well driller brought it to our attention and we were putting them in. To give you an idea, if we were putting the sanitary seal in at the time of drilling the bores in the first place, the line item is usually about 15 to 20,000. Unfortunately, to retrofit it, it's a bit more complicated. So we're having a few issues around how we address that.
What is a sanitary seal, please?
Okay, so it's what we're effectively doing is sealing the cavity around the outside of the casing of the bore. So it creates a seal which stops water penetrating down and using a sort of a preferential flow path along the side of the casing. They have to be about 10 metres deep in order to be effective. So it's quite a rigmarole.
So it is to prevent surface water and all that going down, including the upper water table, interfering with what's further below and where we source our water from.
No further questions. 6.82, the Timwell generator. Is there not one there already?
No. No, this was a capital project that came through the last L2P.
Councillor Revley?
Is this to cover new, like protozoas and some of those things, or is it just is a insurance policy that in case we ever need it?
The generator? Yes. Yeah, so all of our Ashburton supplies have standby generation. It was always thought that initially Timwood could be serviced from just having portable equipment, but when it became apparent that most of our contractors are on the Ashburton side, it was decided that it would be better to have something in place. It was also a consideration became more important when Lake Hood was connected to the Timwood infrastructure.
6.83, Councillor McMillan. I waited for that.
Thank you. I mean, obviously we had a boil water notice again in Methven. So is it usual that it's always 3 consecutive days before you lift it? I'm just wondering, because it happened on a Saturday morning, it was a long weekend, we got all that rain on the Friday night, then of course it snowed midnight on this Saturday, and then it was fine for the next 2 days. So a lot of people were asking, is it lifted, is it lifted? Do we need to sort of send the information out that a boil water notice is on for a minimum of 3 days? Is that something that could be done?
Yes, through the chair. So we've had some discussions with comms around this, and we have reached a view that if we know we're in the requirement for 3 clear days, we will make that apparent at the time the notice is issued. We have had circumstances where we've issued precautionary water notices slightly preemptively in the expectation that the equipment was going to go out of spec. And on those occasions when it didn't occur, we were able to lift the notice a lot sooner. But we can make that information available when we communicate that to the community.
And just supplementary, the new texting system seemed to work really well with that, and a lot of people were receiving the texts, and I'm quite happy with how that was working, so thank you.
Councillor Price.
Thank you. With regard to the water treatment optimisation project and the potential cost implications, is this potentially going to be an amendment to the long-term plan? Is it that significant, or will it be going into the next long-term plan?
Yeah, so it's probably a bit premature for me to make a call at this point. I think we are probably in the space of a new programming it for the new LTP. A lot of it will depend on timing and how soon we have to respond, because obviously we are non-compliant with our equipment. We need to do some work to bring ourselves into compliance, but given the way the drinking water standards are likely to change, it may be better in this case to take a breath and wait till we see what the look of those standards are before we proceed.
Councillor Malcolm.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Andrew. The Christchurch City Council is reducing its chlorine once again. They're talking about having nil chlorine in some of their bores. Is there a chance for some of our bores to have nil treatment or minimum treatment?
Well, certainly our current approach is having chlorination as one of our primary barriers. You won't get an officer's recommendation suggesting to remove chlorine from our supplies.
.9, Northwest Wastewater Servicing. Councillor Revley.
Yeah, no, my question is, we're near the end of the year, are we going to get a figure of the tonnage of silage that come off our wastewater farm at some stage?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm sure we can get that information, yeah.
.610, Stormwater. Is that the consent down West Street? Is that the consent we're talking about?
No, through the chair, that's our global, network-wide stormwater consent, which we applied for in June last year. My understanding is we may even be getting notified of a decision imminently. So we're actually waiting to hear the result.
Councillor Brown.
Just wondering why we get a result when the application's on hold. But my question's around, because the application's on hold and they're addressing their ongoing concerns, what are their, excuse me, what are their ongoing concerns?
Yes, so through the chair, we've been, there's been some toing and froing with this consent application. And typically what happens is when we are negotiating elements of the application, our application includes a fairly comprehensive monitoring program being proposed. Some of the negotiations are, it requires, dare I say it, boffins to decide. They have arguments basically, and then they resolve what those discussions. They end up with a resolution, and then that gets put into the monitoring program or what other parts of the consent. We agree to put it on hold when we're having those discussions. That's simply what it means. We took it off hold a few days ago because we thought we were close. So the theory is the decision is imminent.
6.11, District Water Management, Surface Water Strategy. Councillor Price.
Just an update on that with regard to Central South Island Fish and Game. We did have a representative at the Biodiversity Working Group, and he did undertake to follow that up with people back in his office to see if there's a representative, if a representative would be forthcoming.
It is a little disappointing when these organisations say they want to be part of it, but then I think it's about a month ago that it closed and they still haven't put somebody up. Councillor Brown?
I'll say nothing about that. The MAR Governance Group met on the 31st of May. Does Council play a part in that?
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They did meet on the 31st of May, and I've recently been appointed, and it was the first meeting. So, yes.
Nothing to report from the meeting?
No.
Hopefully the Strategic Water Study Committee will meet as soon as possible. We had a timeline, but must be getting close to slipping. Thank you, Shamal and Andy. Roding, welcome the team.
Brian will introduce.
Yeah. Have an interesting, Brian will introduce presentation. Jeremy has shown this at the Roding Reference Group meetings. Very well to see. Come up, Anando. You're part of the team.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we just thought today we'd take the opportunity of letting you know just how we go about getting our resurfacing program and our rehabilitation program worked out for each year. These are our main expenditures in the capital renewal area. So I thought it was timely that we just gave you an insight into what goes on, and got the two roading engineers that look after the total district to give you that insight.
Yep, so firstly I've got a pie graph here showing the percentage of our funding for both resurfacing and rehabilitation, road resurfacing and rehabilitation. So 24% of our funding goes to road resurfacing and 19 goes to road rehabilitation. So that's a total of 43%, which is, as Brian said, a significant portion of our total funding for roads. So with that money, we're able to resurface around 70 kilometres of road per year and rehabilitate around 12 kilometres of road a year. So our sealed road network is 1,507 kilometres in length. So, yeah. So what I've got to show today is our models. So we have a DTIMS model which is for road resurfacing and a GeoSolve STL model for road rehabilitation. So that's STL stands for structural treatment length. So I'll go mainly over the DTIMS model today because they're relatively the same and they produce the same similar things. So, yeah. So how the DTIMS model works is it splits our sealed road into 2,278 treatment lengths, and it models every section of our sealed road network, and it gives us a program, a 20-year program from 2017 to 2037. So what goes into it is our visual condition inspection. So that's basically we go out and inspect the road and get a visual condition of the road. the falling weight deflectometer, which is basically a falling weight which measures the strength of the pavement, so that also goes into it, and high-speed data, which is a truck that drives along the roads and looks at the condition and the surface and all those kind of things. So that all goes into the DTIMS model. So hopefully we can see that. So that's basically a spreadsheet that we get from DTIMS. So that's every section of road, sealed road in the district, and a whole bunch of data that comes with it. So firstly, it shows our road hierarchy, so primary collectors, secondary collectors, access low volume roads. It shows our traffic volumes, so how much traffic we've got on the road and the percentage of heavy vehicles on the roads. So that goes into calculating the proposed year. It also shows our existing surface type. So yeah, if it's a chip seal, asphalt, how many layers, what type of chip seal, you know, the whole deal. So that also goes into the program. It shows our surface age, so how long that surface has been on there for, the expected life of that seal, so that specific seal, and as a result the remaining life of that seal. So the final thing that goes in is our condition, so our roughness, our road condition, and our pavement strength. So all of those things work together in the model, and it produces the final thing, which is a proposed treatment year. So as you can see down there, it's all the year that each treatment is suggested to be done. So this is STL also produces the exact same thing, but does that for our pavements. So DTIMS is for the surface and STL is for the pavement. So STL also produces a little graph like this. So this is a cross section of Arundel Gorge Road near Mayfield. That's about 8 kilometres length. So if you can see, about halfway along is where the Mayfield township starts. So the blue basically means we've got lots of life in the pavement. So the full bar means 25 plus years life, and where it's white is showing the very small amount of life we've got left in the pavement. So as we can see, there's quite a lot of small, with no life left in the pavement, but there's also a good section where there's lots of life. So that section there is on our program for rehabilitating this year. So once we've got these models, we've got to figure out, does it make sense, basically. As it is a model, it tries to be right, but maybe there's 10% errors and things like that. So for 90% of the time, it's good, but we've still got to personally go and check that everything's right. So things we look at is, do we have specific plans for this road? So it might come up to, well, Thompson's Track's a good example. It might come up needing a reseal, but we know we're going to widen that seal in the future, so we would not do the reseal and wait for the widening. Is there other works on the road? So around town we have a lot of undergrounding, we have a lot of roadworks, a lot of stormwater, wastewater repairs, pipe repairs. So if we know the road's going to get dug up, we obviously will push our program back so we don't do a brand new reseal on our road and then the road gets dug up. We also look at the expected life of the seal, and if DTIMS is saying that we should do it before the expected life of the seal, maybe there's something else going on. Is there drainage, is there, obviously the road is deteriorating faster than it should, so we need to look at that and say, is that actually applicable for resealing? Should we do some other treatments to fix that? And then one of the other things is looking is it economical to put into the contract? So doing small 100-metre sections all around the district might not be economical. So we tried to package the treatment lengths in areas so that it's more economical. The pricing we get back from our contractors is better, so we can get more work done for less, basically. And then we also look at how does it compare to our pavement data from STL. So if we know our road is going to fail in 5 years, for example, that's what STL tells us, maybe it's not worth putting a reseal on that's going to last 15 years because we know our underlying pavement will fail, and that will be a waste of a reseal. So we look at all those things to basically figure out our program.
Ask a question. Yep. To make it clear, you talk about pavement and surfaces.
Yep.
So the pavement is what you call the base.
Yes.
What I would call the base. Is
yep.
that correct? And your surfaces is just the chip.
Yep. So
on
the
top.
surface is.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah. Surface is just the chip seal and the yep. So I've got a map here of basically the whole network and what DTIMS is saying. So the point here is not really to show what's happening each year, but you can see that everything is programmed, everything is on there. It's just a matter of if it's in 20 years, what the priority basically. So next map here, I've got basically from 2017 to 2022. So that's all of the sections of road that DTIMS is telling us to do in the next 5 years. So yeah, once again, the colours, that's all just means different years, and yeah.
Sure.
So here's the last map, black being what we have done already and what we are doing this year, and red being what's left over. So that's the exact same map that I showed before, but different colours. So you can see that we've actually we've gone through quite a large amount in the last 3 years since 2017. So shows you how things are coming on, and obviously the red will be coming up in the next couple of years.
Councillor Rubley got a...
Yeah, a couple of questions that just don't add up in my head. You're only going to do 70 kilometres of resurfacing. Our contracts go out for our contractors at 15 years. 70 kilometres will not get us around the district in 15 years, will it, of resurfacing? So, and the rehab looks much the same. So I say we're only doing about half enough. So does your model actually do all the roads we need within our specified time for our contracts?
Yeah, if I could answer that, Mr. Chairman. Basically, the model is telling us on an average for the 20-year period that we should be doing 70k per year. That's on average. The model says sometimes it's 65k, sometimes it's 85k's. But we don't want to split the financial side of it up in that sense. Budgeting, it's far better to keep a constant budget going forward. So we've averaged it out and it's 70k per year. And that's what the model tells us for the next 20 years we should be doing.
To add to that, well, we're asking our contracts go out that their road life, their resale life is 15 years. So we're getting more than that out of all our roads.
I don't know where you got that figure from. 15 years is a fairyland as far as I'm concerned.
That came from the chairman or the CEO of ACL said that their contract was showing 15 years. So that's where that one came from.
Yeah, well, basically, if you look at the surface, which is what we're looking at here, if you put down a grade 6, you're lucky you could get 5 years out of a grade 6. If you put down a grade 3, you might get 10 to 12 years out of it if you're extremely lucky. That's the design life of a grade 3 chip. If you put down a 3.5, you might get 12 years. That would be the design life of that particular chip combination. All right. In some circumstances, the design life is exceeded because the traffic volumes, the condition of the seal when it was first put down, etc., work in its favour, and it may last 20 years if you're lucky. So you may get an average of somewhere like, I think our average currently is somewhere in the vicinity of about 9 years.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. Just wondering how flexible that is within its timelines. So two things. Do CRMs feed into it at all? So suddenly the public are telling us there's a certain area that there's issues and you're getting a lot of CRM reports on a certain stretch of road. Does that have an influence? And if there's a changing land use, so suddenly there's a lot more heavy trucks on a certain area of road that create some damage, can our program be flexible enough to change around for those things if things change unexpectedly?
To give you an answer to that, if you look at what NZTA have done after the Kaikoura earthquakes, State Highway 1 was closed. They had to come down through the Waia Valley. They knew that the Waia Valley might not take the added trucking that was going to have to come that way if coming into Christchurch. They had 2 days, I think it was, whereby they went in, did the necessary investigation very quickly by running a high-speed truck through that area, and then did a DTIMS model, which is what we're working on. Progressed that model with the anticipated traffic volumes, and worked out where they needed to do some work very quickly to make certain that the road would last for 2 or 3 years anyway, whilst they were dealing with the Kaikoura highway. So the model is available to do that, and it's just a matter of whether we want them to do it at a particular time or not.
Councillor Price.
Sorry, my question's been covered, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Councillor Lovett.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like, we've got a computerised model here telling us when things should be looked at and done. How often do you physically drive around the roading network to check some of the roads, and do you check work that's been done a year later as well, because some of it, you know, does pack up?
As we said in the presentation, part of the work is investigating the sites that the DTIMS and STL tell us are required, because we don't entirely trust the model. We are still trying to bring in more condition data, etc., and trying to weigh up that condition data as to how much weighting in the model certain aspects of it should have to give us a better answer across the board. When we did the high-speed data truck survey just recently, we deliberately put it through routes that we knew we hadn't done any work on, that had new rehabilitation work done and new resurfacing work done, and also areas that were failing quite badly. And the idea of that is to try and work out what the model is picking up, or what the truck is picking up by way of condition, and how relative it is one to the other, so that we can then try and replicate that in the model and get the answers we're looking for. The model is one tool that we use. The other major tool is investigation by our contractors, ourselves, and anybody else that sends in CRMs, etc., etc. So all those things are used to eventually come up with the program.
Councillor Rollinson.
Thank you. My question was, at the beginning, Jeremy showed the graph which said 43% of the funding goes into the resurface and rehab. So can you enlighten us about the other 57%?
Approximately 50% of that would be tied up with normal maintenance. So that's your pothole work, your metal maintenance. We also have, outside of the rehab and resurfacing, a fair portion of unsealed roads out there that have to be fixed and keep maintained as well. This is only the sealed surface that we've been talking about here.
Thank you.
No further questions. Thank you very much, Jeremy. That was... and Brian. You can perhaps stay there, Brian, or 6.12. Contracts, any comments? 612.2. That is a extension of the collaboration between us, Mackenzie, Timaru.
It's a letter basically to NZTA seeking approval to continue the ARC maintenance contract.
It won't take as much work this time as last time, I guess, because you've got a base that everybody agreed to last time. Will there be much variation, Brian?
I'm not sure. We're looking at, I'm keeping out of it to a large degree this time, and Jeremy's taking a lead role for us. Basically, we're looking at the possibility of including other aspects into the maintenance contract. Our view is that perhaps it shouldn't be, and that's the resurfacing contract, for argument's sake, being part of the overall maintenance contract. We think ourselves that no, that's not really an area that we want to visit at this stage. I know that Timaru are keen to go down that particular path, but we're not at this stage.
612.2 or 612.4 RDR bridges. $612.5. Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. Just a correction there. I think the community board requested that the pole was painted blue, similar to the street lights in town, so that it sort of blends in. I've just checked with the chair of the community board, and he said it was blue, so it wasn't black. I think black was the original colour proposed, and we thought that blue would be.
No, the original was just a straight galvanised pole, but if it's blue, thank you.
Maronan Road Bridge. Unsubsidised roading, Populous Road Seal Extension. Must be nearly finished now, is it, by the time we have this meeting?
My understanding is that they're working on the last, must be 1.5 k's or thereabouts. And that's where we're at this point in time.
Councillor Brown.
Just while you're leaving unsubsidised, you used to have a column there, State Highway 1, but it doesn't get reported anymore, I don't think. But just my observation is the Chertsey Railway crossing on State Highway 1 has got very rough lately. They've done some work on it, and now it's worse than what it was when you cross over it. I don't know whether you've noticed or anyone else has noticed it, but I have, and perhaps you could pass on to them to make it smoother.
And through you, Mr. Chair, there's plans to do an upgrade of that particular crossing. We have been asked to provide a detour, and that's in place. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head when the actual work is to go ahead, but it's through this next season at some stage.
That's great. Could we have a column in here, State Highway 1, letting us know what is going on the highway? I know they look after it, but just for our information.
It's also interesting that accident up on Methven Waimari Scenic Highway is actually a state highway corner, that it actually, the state highway goes up Waimari Road and then across Highway 77 to the Rakai Bridge. We have got two roads there, but the intersection is actually controlled by NZTA. That's correct, Mr. Firth, isn't it?
Basically, as you come out of Methven, you're on Mount Hutt Station Road initially, which is State Highway 77. When you get up to Waimarama Road, that is also State Highway 77, and that'll take you up to the junction with McLennan's Bush Road and Arundel-Rikaya Gorge Road. If you turn right on the Arundel-Rikaya Gorge Road, you are continuing on State Highway 77.
Footpaths. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Mr. Firth. Mr. Firth, the 1718 footpath curb and channel renewals, it states that the contract work has been completed and officers are still working with ACL to remedy all defects. I'm just wondering, we're coming up to a year since that 17-18 period finished. When do you hope to have that completed?
The defects liability period, depending on the contract, is either for 12 months or for 2 years. So that's the contractor. We will not sign off a contract until either 12 months or 2 years following the contract, depending on the conditions of that contract, is complete.
Any comments on upcoming tenders, vandalism?
Thank you.
Councillor Ellis.
Thank you. Through you. Just contracts awarded, it says we have none, but we're out there gritting the roads now for ice. Do we not tender that out? Do we just give that away? And how many kilometres of gritting are we doing now each year?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I can't answer the actual number of kilometres that are gritted. Basically, the gritting has always been a part of the maintenance contract, and each year, depending on the conditions, meteorological condition I'm talking about here, if we know that it's going to be quite frosty that night or there's the possibility of ice, there are certain sections of the network that they go out and immediately grit. And if we are unlucky and miss a particular area, then we'll grit that as well. But gritting is not done unless the the conditions warrant it, and we normally have preconceived ideas of where that should be.
Supplementary, it's probably not so much about the ice, it's what causes the ice, which generally speaking is it's along a hedge line where we have these issues. Are we yet charging the people responsible for that road needing gritting, or is the general ratepayer still footing the bill?
At this stage, it's the general ratepayer fitting the bill, though those areas that were causing, or we felt were causing the biggest problem, we're working with them, and in the main, I'm pretty certain that to date we have had pretty near 100% response in the time frame that we were asking them to work to.
Supplementary. There are some hedges, even when they are reduced in height, though, just because of the orientation with the sun and the road and the angles. Regardless, whatever's there causes problems on our roads with ice, and to me, in some circumstances, the only option should be total removal of that hedge line. But yeah, I don't know where we go with that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, on that, we know what we went with the tree shading side of it was that where we had problems with the tree shading the full road and we had an accident history, they were the ones that we targeted. Now, we know that there are still plenty of situations out there where trees shade the road, and we will more than likely have to grit that area, but to date, we've got no real safety reason as to why, without any accident history, as to why we should enforce the tree removal.
Methven Community Board, Councillor McMillan.
Thank you. I would like to move that recommendation that the board requests a report on tree removal and tidying of the Methven Cemetery.
Councillor Reveley seconded it. Any discussion? Do you have a reason? Perhaps give us a little bit of background.
Oh, a little bit of background. So there has been some work done on the Methven Cemetery, just tidying up some of the trees, but to move forward, we wanted to report it to see which trees can stay, if there are any that can go, and what planting we need to look at in the future. So that's basically the story of that.
Any questions? If not, all in favour of that motion, please say aye. Contrary? Carried. Reports from the joint roading reference groups. I don't intend to go through the minutes of each one. Any councillors are quite entitled to come, so they're there for your reading to see what we discuss. You can see we do discuss a lot of stuff, and the question was asked, both committees, did they wish to continue, and the answer was definitely yes until the end of this term, then we will look at it then. Madam Mayor?
Mr Chairman, through you to either Councillor Rawlinson or to our Chief Executive, at the bottom of page number 52, item 4.2, I think it's meant to be the CBD upgrade. The business owners will be communicated with as the work progresses from the design phase to the physical works. Now, it was raised recently at the meeting that they have been communicated to, but the responses have been somewhat tardy, is what I heard. And I'm wondering if there's anything we as councillors are expected to do, or if officers have that matter in hand.
Councillor Rawlinson, do you want to answer it, or do you want me
I
to?
had a question about something else, but well, my first comment to that would be that under Jane's team, the team there will be working with the people in the town, the businesses. But Neil, you probably have more information.
Through the chair, we had a meeting this morning with the consultants and the team, just looking at the preliminary design and discussing the way forward, and that concern was raised. So we are going to consider what we do about doing it. We definitely need to engage, and if the people aren't engaging, we need to make an attempt to do more. So we'll be having a meeting soon with the working party, and we'll discuss that very item.
Councillor Rawlinson?
Thank you. And it was just on page 51, a comment in there that the CBD upgrade is to commence in the next 2 to 3 years. I think that possibly has been misinterpreted by the minute taker. I mean, it's a work in progress at this point as to the beginning of the work, so it's just going to keep rolling out, isn't it? But I don't imagine it's going to be 2 to 3 years before we actually start.
No, that's correct. The construction is probably in that sort of time frame, but it could be even a bit sooner than that.
That's right. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that point.
Mr Chairman,
Madam Mayor?
Thank you, Mr Chairman. May I just seek clarification on page 54? These are for the minutes of the Community Reference Group Urban from April the 17th. It states under the cycling and walking strategy that Mr Firth advised that he was about to go out to consultants to update and review the existing cycle walking strategy, and he was hoping to have the work done in the next 3 to 4 months. So I'm just seeking roughly when it's expected and what the method will be reporting back to us, if it's going to an urban reference group or if it's going to come straight to service delivery.
Currently, a proposal to go to a group of consultants is with my manager. I'm just waiting to get clarification as to when we should put that out. Initially, I thought we would upgrade the current cycling strategy, but when I looked at that particular document, considered where facilities are currently, what we're doing with the CBD and other things, I felt that perhaps a complete new revised or complete new strategy should be what we're looking for. And so that's where I'm heading at this particular point in time, and hopefully within a matter of weeks now, I would like to be taking that scope of works to a consultant to have a look at and price.
And through the chair, I can just state that it will definitely come to Service Delivery Committee, being a strategy.
No further discussion on either reference group? Ashburton District Road Safety Coordinating Committee minutes, they're for your information. Once more, council laws are quite... Councillor Brown.
Just one question out of there on the page 59 at the bottom. It says the advance warning sign on Thompson's track will be up for 3 to 6 months, as long as needed. Why would you take it down? Or is it to be taken down?
On Somerton Road, the signage that's been placed there at present is under trial, and the trial is being looked at by NZTA with us feeding into that certain information that's coming from the actual visual display unit. At the end of that, we'll be basically told what the outcome of the trial was, and we'll see where we go from there. But as you pointed out, the stop ahead sign, if it's there already, why would we take it out? I doubt very much that we would.
As long as common sense prevails, it's okay.
Ashburton Total Mobility Committee meeting minutes. Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to you a personal thanks, because you attended this meeting shortly after you and I have been to Environment Canterbury to verbally present on public transport in the Ashburton district. Councillor Wilson, I see you asked the question around a community vehicle, which is something that Environment Canterbury suggested to you and I that we could trial, because we were advised that we were one of the few districts in Canterbury who didn't have a community vehicle. Am I reading the minutes correctly that there wasn't support at Total Mobility?
That is correct. If you read the number 6, taxi company were not particularly enthusiastic about having a community vehicle in competition with them.
So supplementary, Mr. Chairman, the community vehicle perhaps could have been better suited for Methven, Rakaya and Hines, but were they not comfortable? Was the group not comfortable with any of those locations?
It wasn't really pushed in a major way at this stage, no. Councillor Urquhart, you got something to add? You were the actual council.
Yeah, you're pretty much right.
Delegate.
There wasn't really any support for a public service. The taxi companies do run a service which is reasonably competitive anyway. The other side of the coin is the rest homes, etc., run their own service, and it was generally thought amongst the members of the Total Mobility that it was something that didn't need to be considered really at this stage. So.
Thank you. With that clarification, I will write back to Environment Canterbury and tell them there wasn't a willingness. Thank you.
That concludes our open meeting agenda. Thank you to the press. Seeing it's only 3:05, we'll continue on.